Ringwoodite. So why is that important? Because when they tell us things and we think it's baloney, and then we shrug it off and we laugh it off, oh, it's not real, blah, 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 it's not, it's pseudoscience, blah, blah, because we're waiting for white folks to validate it. Then later on, super late, Johnny come lately, you know, they validate it, and then everybody, oh, wow, that's deep. When that happens, you have to give credence to everything else they were saying that you have yet to prove, and just put that in the category with things that you have yet to prove. Like our pineal gland catching matter, right? But the science is what it's catching is information, but we know matter has another form as the photon is transformed into electrons. So now we know that information is carried by photons and electrons through all of our electrical equipment. No different than it is in the brain and the body. So when those photons come, that black light comes, that activates the pineal, that's carrying information that then is transduced into actual electric impulses that our brain can use, etc., etc., etc. Anyway, pinoline. Pinoline, that lean with it, rock with it. Pinoline is a brain detoxifier produced by the pineal gland. And not only is it a brain detoxifier, it activates neurogenesis as well as neuromelanogenesis. All right. Also, melatonin produced in the pineal gland, not melanin, melatonin, which is a cellular detoxifier, helps repair. It also acts with superoxide dismutase to activate telomerase. Melatonin also has a key role in immune activation. Immune, all right? The immune gene that produces the immune proteins, all right, that we'll talk about a little bit more in depth. But those immune proteins work with the histones and regulate all of the gene expression throughout the body. All right, BMP, remember that. Bone morphogenic proteins. They work with the immune gene or the immune proteins and function with pinoline and melatonin to control the involuntary nervous system. So now we see who's in control of the involuntary nervous system. Information is stored in magnetic fields and travels in photons and electrons. The bone stores charge and therefore information. The body utilizes this information in the form of BMP. The pineal gland works directly with the skeleton to store information and access stored information. The body's blueprint is an acid. Okay, DNA is an acid. So who or what writes the blueprint? The Ogdo. This is why I like to go into these spiritual systems, because there's so much beautiful science that we're missing out on. When our ancestors told us that a tomb, the self-created, created 4 sets of twins, and that he, with those 4 sets of twins, control all of creation. Hence, we just took that as a story, a myth. Even got some guys supposed to be experts in Nile Valley, blah, 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 to tell you, oh, no, that's not real. That's just myth. Well, I found them actually in your DNA. All right. So your ancestors are alive and well and kicking. Now, here's the study. All right. Because I had some guys, Dr. Reggie and Dr. Reggie and I think a couple other people. They know I introduced the study of biosemiotics to the conscious community. So what they tried to do was say, and this is funny because these are the same people that say, oh man, where's your source? If you don't have a reference for your information, it's no good. Then once you provide references, they say, oh, that's right. He's not really that smart. He's getting that stuff from those people right there. So you damned if you do, damned if you don't. But the real problem is jealousy. So without getting too deep into that, here's the real origins, because they tried to attribute the entire study of biosemiotics just to discredit me and what I bring to the table, to a white woman named Judy King. And I read Judy King. I love Judy King's work. But I also read the rest of biosemiotics and study biosemiotics as a whole. If you look down on the right, the International Journal of the Humanities is written by Judy King. So, not to take away from anything she's doing, but, these guys sometimes. So anyway, let me show you the origin of this. And this is why you have to do this study. The National Socialist Party, the Nazi Party, all right? I'm going to try to get through this. I'm going to try to speed you through this. The Thule Society, which was the esoteric aspect of the Nazis, right? This is the origins of biosemiotics, all right? Friedrich Solomon Rothschild, born December 17th, 1899. This is the guy who created biosemiotics. The Rothschilds funded the study of biosemiotics. So there's no one European that could interpret the Medu Neter or the hieroglyphs alone. This is a group effort funded by the Rothschilds. So we have to understand this ancestral information that we shrug off, that a lot of these idiots call pseudoscience, is obviously not that pseudo, because somebody's investing trillions of dollars in decoding it. Why? 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 Okay. I'll tell you why. Let's get to this work. All right? Let's get to this work. This is what your DNA on the left-hand side on the bottom right here. This is what your DNA, what people tell you your DNA looks like, the winding staircase. That is such a fraud. That is not what your DNA looks like. Okay? Jump all the way over to the right-hand side and you'll see nucleosomes. That's what your DNA looks like. That string wound around those balls, that's what your DNA looks like. Those balls are the histones, right? You have 4 sets of them, all right? You have an H1 histone and then 4 sets. Here's a better picture. This is the H1 histone right here. This green guy right here with the red band. That red band is your DNA. This green guy is the H1 histone. These four sets of balls are the four sets of twins that are generated from this H1 histone. All right. So the H1, the hidden one, right there, right there. I'm not making any of this up. The core of 8 histone molecules, right? These are the guys that write the information into the DNA. It's how information gets into DNA. These are the guys that put it there. All right. Now let's go back to this. This is a side view. When you look at the shin is a top-down view of H1 histones. All right. The shin means everlasting life, a circuit. Now the crazy thing is, a Coptic word for this is wine, but that'll be relevant later on. The shin is almost always seen with Horus, signifying its electric nature and relationship to the light body. All right. Shenu, which is the elongated shin, all the way to the left, where my name is. That's a shin. The elongated one, called the cartouche or the shenu, means everlasting protection in life or magic incantation, which refers to a potential carried in the bloodline, which is why there were no cartouches made for foreign pharaohs and kings in Egypt. They didn't have the bloodline, so they didn't get a cartouche. All right. So when you think about the science, what a better way to protect oneself from evil, which manifests as ailments, than in the DNA. Right? This is how they saw evil manifesting. This is how demons, this is how they saw that. When a person got sick, they were vexed with demons. Right? That's what they refer to those things as, what we would call viruses and bacteria, fungus, etc. They called those demons. So when you look at protecting oneself from evil, that type of evil, which would hinder one's life or one's flourishing, one's ability to flourish, right? The swaj in Egypt, which means greening and flourishing at the same time, because internal greening is how you stay healthy. But you see the understanding of the science encoded right there, right in the histone. And now today, the intermediary between the histones and activating of gene sequences on DNA is called the ammonia gene and the ammonia proteins. So you can look all this stuff up. All right. So some of this stuff we're going to skip. So I want to get to the meat and potatoes. All right, epigenetics. Epigenetics, the science of how new information gets written into the DNA, like inbred fear of white folks and self-hate. All right. This is information being recorded through the sensory systems of the body into the plasma. The plasma is relating that information to the histones. The histones are writing that into history, and it's being recorded and written into DNA. Okay, this is how that system works. So I'm not going to spend too much time on it. But this guy, what is Amen? Amin, right? They say that at the end of prayer. Or amino acid. Why are they related? Because amino acids were found near the temple of Jupiter Ammon in Libya. That is where they were first discovered, proteins. So that's why they were named Ammon. Ammon and ammonia. And so Ammon plays a key role in this whole thing. So I'm going to show y'all how he got us into this shit. He's going to get us out of it. When these acids combine, you get amino acids. All right, so back to the Kamenu. Amun gene produces Amun enzymes that control DNA repair and gene activation. Horns of Amun control the electrical activity in the body. Now, check these guys out. I just want to give you a throwback. Remember when I brought this information to you? Um, HEK 293 cells, all right, were taken from aborted babies and added to all these various foods, all right? The company that was extracting the liver cells, the HEK 293 cells from the aborted babies and selling it to these large companies was a company named Cinemix, right? So you can look this stuff up. Why is this important? Because the HEK 293 cell line modifies the not signaling pathway, which allows your histones to communicate with your genes, your active genes in your cells. So we're not talking about the DNA wound up around the histones. No, we're talking about the actual um, nucleuses in the cells telling the cells what genes to activate, what genes to turn off. The HEK 293 cell line was discovered back in the 70s to be able to modify that and cut that off, cut that communication line off. This is why it was added as a means of genocide into all of your foods, so your natural systems in your body could be shut down. This is cutting down your natural DNA repair systems. Okay? Now, why do I have those sneakers there? Just my son loved those sneakers. He said, "Daddy, look at those are my sneakers. It got my name on it." So I had to throw my man in there. Um, just for my iKing family. I just got to throw that in there for my iKing family. And for those of you who aren't aware, get the iKing book. It's on the website, 40dayfruitfast.com, and you'll be able to see how the the four sets of twins were then not only in the biology and our science, but also in the Asian sciences as well. Um, they've been kept alive by various means. So I just want you to see there's more to spirituality than spookism. There's science, hardcore science underlining these things. The Ogdo the Kamenu. Why is Wosir, Osiris, or Asar the perfect black? Why? AU, right? Isn't that the scientific symbol for gold? And what's significant about gold? It does not oxidize or rust, right? Powerful. But look in modern science. Look at the 8 again, right? So you get to see the 8 again. The 8 forces that act throughout all of the universe, right? And then in our periodic table, look at these guys. Look at these guys, right? For people who haven't seen, Ray, Osir, and Ptah, right there in the middle. The Ray, Osir, Ptah pathway. Right? Why is that important? Because these are the guys, the transitional metals in your brain that function with the pineal, etc., for light transmission. Without these guys, you'd be brain dead. Okay. DNA versus the histones. Do we have to have this conversation? Because Western science posits DNA as the primary cause. Behind that is the no God theory, right? There is no God controlling anything. There's no higher forces. There's just DNA, and whatever your DNA says, you're locked into. So if you have the BRCA1 gene or the BRCA2 gene, it's a guarantee you're going to get breast cancer. And we all know that's not true because only 25% of the women that have the BRCA1 or BRCA2 genes actually get breast cancer. So DNA cannot be the end all be all, right? And now you know that the histones are actually writing the information into the DNA, and that's happening on a day-to-day basis via the plasma and the other sensory equipment throughout the body. Okay, so here's another look at our histones. Okay, so yeah. All right, guys. Now, what is this? Bas relief from the tomb of T at Sakura. Why do I have this here? Just to show that our ancestors had a thorough knowledge of electromagnetism. That's all this is here for. Those are catfish. Catfish are electromagnetic fish. Very important for you to understand. Our ancestors knew this science. That's why in the story of Usir, Osar, or Osiris, it was a catfish that swallowed his penis. We need to get that. All right? But I'm going to try to move us along a little bit. Black Eugenicists International. Today, the movement grew big. It shrunk small. It grew big. It shrunk small again, but we still here. Protons, neutrons, and electrons are particle aspects of waves. With the exception of the electron, these are carrier waves for smaller frequencies. Electrons, photons, quarks, etc. are smaller frequencies that embed themselves in larger waves. That is Minister Inky again, original research. Right? So as science catches up to that, you'll have that already. Okay, there's no particle or wave. The particle is a part of the wave. It's all one thing. All right. UVA, UVB, UVC come from the sun. X-rays and gamma rays come from atoms. Electrons emit X-rays. Nuclei emit gamma rays. You have to understand this. This is how you can light up. This is how we can illuminate. A vacuum tube, which is used for all modern technology, can emit all forms of radiation. Our body's a vacuum tube. When your ancestors called themselves black, were they referring to a color? No. Black is a process. They were telling you that they are not only capable of the process, but a part of the process. This is where I came with my magnus opus, the Enki Wusia equation. Singularity defined by the golden spiral, which is the Wu sound in the Medu Neter, the hidden letter, divided by infinity. Singularity divided by infinity equals your unique perception. Okay? Your unique perception, your you-ness. Okay? This defines the point from which all waves spring, i.e. future, past, present, time, and space. When you look at the Western modality, right? They come with this observer crap, right? They're just an observer. And all things are happening, there's observers there. No. Okay? That observer defined by this equation, singularity divided by infinity, is where all those things spring from. So the Fourier transform, the four, right? You see it right there encoded in the word. The four, again, four sets of twins, right? The 1 over 137 fine structure constant, how waves combine, all right, which is the European interpretation of the hieroglyph for the waters anew. Okay, the fine structure constant, how waves combine, the Fourier transform. All right, so you have to understand that's all this is about. Electromagnetic coupling. That means how waves combine. Simple science, how waves combine. When all of the electromagnetic waves combine, they produce that blackness. The Fourier transform is how you single out various frequencies within that modality. All right. So if you look at the eye is broken into that 8 and 1 arrangement. All right, just giving you a speed through because I've been teaching the same thing for 5 years already, 6 years. So people should get this. All right, the hands and the bones in the hand, the skin every 8 years. How the original fertilized cell multiplies in pregnancy. In your hair, those of us that have hair. 8 cuticle, eight. Let me bring that back. I'll be going too damn fast. Eight cortexes for every cuticle. Then it was told in the Bible story, right? 8 people on that boat. 8 people on that boat. All right, so galactose. We're going to get to galactose. This is our guy right here. This is our guy right here. Very important in the whole story. But I don't think we're going to deal with this guy today. We're going to skip this guy. I know y'all might be a little sad. We're going to skip this guy today. All right. We're going to get right to the Lux genes. All right. Lux genes. Lux genes are activated by luciferin and luciferase. Luciferin is the protein. Luciferase is the enzyme. When luciferase comes in contact with oxygen, it lights up the biology. That's where the beetle came in that I skipped through. There are two types of beetles. There's the dung beetle, and then there's the firefly. The firefly, our ancestors left us in the pyramids as the transformative beetle which illuminates. We see them all the time in the summertime. Fireflies, look it up. A firefly is a beetle. All right? Now, what is the antagonist? What's stopping us from illuminating? Glucose and iron. But not the iron in the blood, the iron that has been pushed into your tissues by nitrogen. That's what excessive nitrogen does in your body. It pushes iron into the tissues and causes hemochromatosis, which is type 3 diabetes now, or whatever they want to call it. The catalysts to activate Lux genes are actually lactose and cortisol. And when I say lactose, I don't mean milk protein. I mean the galactose that's in the actual milk. That's in the actual milk sugar. When you have lactose, it's a combination of glucose and galactose combined. Your body will cleave that galactose from the glucose and use that galactose. So low glucose, stress triggers, C-AMP response, which is a cellular signaling, almost like a hormone produced by cells to signal the cells for various things. But it tells the proteins which activate the Lux gene. Only in a situation where there's low glucose and the iron is properly metabolized and very little nitrogen/ammonia floating around in the body, which is why that's relevant. Now, bioluminescence. Again, bioluminescence, luciferin, luciferase, okay? Also, photoproteins. So there's no reason why we shouldn't be illuminating right now. Luminescent bacteria. Your red blood cells are very close to bacteria, being that they don't have a nucleus. But photoproteins, melanin classifies as a photoprotein. Your melanocytes, we should be illuminating. Okay? They know that. That's why the organization was started by Adam Weishaupt, not so that they could illuminate, but to stop your illumination. Biophotons. Look that word up. Biophoton-driven cellular replication. 9 sets of triplets. All right? From the microtubule gland. Very important. The microtubule gland when we have this concussion discussion. Oh, shit. The concussion discussion. All right. The fallacy of the 7 chakras. The God Complex course. I'm going to have a sale on that for Christmas. Okay? I'm going to have a sale on that. I know the $350. Some people's like, oh my God. But in terms of going to college or taking pre-med, I mean, come on. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. And you're going to get tons more information in the course. I promise you. But I'm going to run a sale on it for the Christmas holidays. Anyway, the real chakra system. All right? You have 7 different types of cells.